These two things have to happen for Boston College's linebacker room to be efficient in 2025.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Thank you all to our everydayers who listen to Locked On Boston College every single day. We are a daily Boston College podcast, the only one out there, and I'm really glad that you're out here listening to our show. On today's show, we're going to go into the portal needs of the basketball team. With one man in and a few more spots left, what does Earl Grant need to do to get his team back into being efficient in 2026? 2025. We're going to relook. I had some really strong thoughts about Aiden Shaw last show, and I'm going to tell you why I might change how I think about him. And finally, we're going to kick things off with a little football talk. So Boston College's linebacker room has been one of the more intriguing rooms of the spring because the storylines around them have been kind of concerning. Now, starting off camp, I can't talk about all injuries, but Bill O'Brien talked about the injuries at camp pretty quickly. He spoke about Jalen Blackwell coming back this last practice. He talked about the injuries to Davion Crouch, who is missing camp, Kamari Dixon, who is missing camp, and Owen McGowan, who is missing camp. Now, we don't have updates on when they're going to be back, their current, where they're at, and maybe we'll get more of that later. But as I mentioned, Jalen Blackwell, he got dinged up at the first practice of the spring. And Bill O'Brien spoke about that this week on Tuesday, saying that he could be out for a while. He really didn't give much there. Now, I don't want to sound the alarm about the linebacker room, but I'm going to. They got to get the first thing I mentioned, two things that have to happen. Some of these guys got to come back. And I feel pretty confident that they will, but I'm not sure what that means. Honestly, I don't know what Davion Crouch's injury is or Owen McGowan's injury. I don't know the severity of it. And that concerns me because as a, just someone covering the team and watching, the hope is that they'll be ready for camp and that you'll have them in the summer. And, McGowan and Crouch, they're both veterans. They've been around for a while. That missing spring piece will not really impact them. I worry about that there's something more to these injuries. And he hasn't spoken about that yet. So that's all conjecture at this point. And that conjecture at a position that is so critical is what gets me a little concerned about BC's linebackers going into the future. Because you just go back a couple of years. When Cam Arnold was learning the position, they had moved him over from safety to linebacker. You saw what happened when you didn't have linebackers that could really do what they need to do. It really impacted your defense. It made it so that, they struggled against the run. They were losing guys in coverage. They really weren't impactful much in terms of big splash plays. You needed them. And so you can't risk not having guys. And so when I hear reports, and I've been there, so I've seen it, that one of your linebackers right now are, and I'm not bashing the kids. I promise you I'm not going to bash them. Tim Hayes, who's a preferred walk-on. You have a couple other preferred walk-ons playing as well. You have Griff Collins, who's a true freshman. He just got there. You're missing Kamari Dixon. And then you have Von Pemberton. Von Pemberton was a running back up until about a month ago. So color me a little concerned with that group. And then you have Bryce Steele, who obviously I'd love to see him be really successful, but he's still coming back from something pretty significant. We'll have to wait to see what he can do. He played last year, but, there's still concerns that, hopefully everything is ready to go, and we're not sure what he can do, but if he could do a lot, that would be great. So you look at that depth, and you're watching it at camp, and you're going, all right, you got a linebacker who's a grad student who's got like a couple months to figure this out. He was a running back a month ago. Do you feel confident having Von Pemberton as one of your linebackers going into the summer? I hope not. Do you really want to? You hit lightning in the bottle last year with Joe Marinaro. Does trotting out preferred walk-ons do you want to risk that? I'm happy with them being depth guys. Believe me, I'm not going to bash saying that these guys shouldn't get a chance, but do you want them to be your only guys? No. So you need the guys that are hurt to come back. And really, you also need to address this in the portal. You know, Bill O'Brien did make some moves in the portal, and watching at camp, some of the guys that he brought in are definitely going to be impacts next year. You've got guys like VJ Wilkins and Dylan Lonergan and Ty Lockwood and some of your defenders. I think you might see something out of, Anya Nuisi or Chuck Nato. You brought in players that you need. But this is new now. With the injuries that you've sustained and the depth issues, you need to bring in somebody. And I think the transfer portal is going to be something that we're going to be watching a lot of this spring, because you're going to want to see, can they get a linebacker? Now, there's been names buzzing around. From what I know, nothing has really, really come to light yet. Like, there hasn't been any visits. There hasn't been any significant movement on that track. Will Boston College do that, or will they just trust their guys? I really do hope Bill O'Brien adds some depth there. You need somebody like a veteran. You need someone maybe from, another school that's played a bunch. Maybe he's not the splashiest player, but someone who's just been there. And maybe it's a star from a MAC school or a Sun Belt school who's played quite a bit too. But those valuable snaps is what you need. You need somebody who has been doing this. So, I hope, I think Davion Crouch is going to be the biggest piece in terms of when he comes back. But, the other guys too, Owen McGowan, you want to see him back. And I've heard good things about Kamori Dixon too. Like, this is a guy that I know they felt really strongly about a couple classes ago. And he was coming along last year. He's only a redshirt freshman, but maybe he's someone you want. But you need to mix it in with a transfer, I think. And we'll have to wait to see what they do. Last I had checked, BC was pretty up against it in terms of their roster limits. I don't think they had much space. And with the house settlement, that could impact how they have to count preferred walk-ons. Bill O'Brien has spoken highly about how valuable those guys are. I don't think he's just going to boot them for scholarship players. But I'm not sure how this is all going to work out. Like, will they have spots for linebackers? Will guys transfer out? Bill O'Brien also has been very vocal about the guys that are here. They've only had 3 that have chosen to leave in the transfer portal. They've had other guys leave for other reasons, but whether they graduated and they just didn't want to have another spot for them or whatever, but 3 guys that have transferred. So the spring, I feel like for BC, you know what you're getting when you have Bill O'Brien there. These players are bought in. So I would not be shocked at all. And if you may get like 1 or 2 guys in the portal, but it's not going to be an exodus. I just don't see that happening. So that's a big concern for me. If they do decide that they need a linebacker, how are they going to find that spot for them? I don't have an answer for that, but they need to, because you cannot go into next year with a gigantic question mark around your linebacker room. So hopefully they can figure that out. And again, the big giant question mark is the injuries. They're not revealing what the injuries are and the length of recovery. If they come back, that's great, but I still think 1 more linebacker at least would be beneficial for the Eagles. Now, in our second segment, we're going to continue our portal chatter by talking about a player that BC basketball landed. I talked about this on Tuesday's show, and why I was wrong, and why I have some different views on why Aiden Shaw actually might be a good fit for BC. I'll explain what I meant in just a moment. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll get exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with your order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, Their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering HVAC and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here of Eagle Insider. If you have not checked out Eagle Insider, my work there speaks for itself. We are the most prolific Boston College site out there with 4 to 5 articles, scoops, details every single day. Right now, you get 50% off a subscription. I hope you join me over there. You can get contact with me with Ask AJ Anything on our message board. It's a great place to join. Become an Eagle Insider today. Now, all our everydayers here at Locked On BC, your team every day, know that I have strong feelings about things. This is part of my job. I have takes. That's what I do. And on Tuesday, when I heard about the newest Boston College transfer, their first transfer, I was stumped. I really was. Boston College had landed Aiden Shaw, a forward, a 6'9", 210-pound forward out of Missouri, a guy who averaged 2.9 points per game, could not shoot from the free throw line, and didn't crack the lineup at Mizzou. And I wondered to myself, why is Boston College going for this guy? When you have Earl Grant, your head coach, who's embattled, who basically is playing for his career at BC this next season. He's coaching for his career, excuse me. Why would Boston College go get a guy that over 3 seasons hasn't done anything for the Tigers? And I thought about it, and I've been reading up and I've been watching tape on him. And there's something about Aiden Shaw that I do feel would be beneficial for BC. And that is he's a plus athlete. Now, when I saw the stats, if you just look stats alone, you look at 2.9 points per game and you're like, is this Josh Beadle all over again? The thing with Josh Beadle was he really didn't do anything special. Like, he wasn't a great outside shooter. He wasn't great on defense. He didn't ball handle. He couldn't shoot. He just he struggled, and that's a fair thing to say. Aiden Shaw does do something well. He is a plus athlete. This guy can jump out of the gym, and having a guy who can attack the rim, a guy who watch his tapes, thunderous dunk after thunderous dunk after thunderous dunk. Maybe there is something there. You read all about him, and he seems like a great guy. He seems like a great teammate. He did a great. He was giving out NIL money for scholarships, and he's a top 100 recruit, so he has the pedigree. Maybe just a change of scenery will be what Aiden Shaw needs to find something. Now, the concern again is you already have someone in your starting lineup who can jump out of a gym. That's Jaden Hastings. And his offensive skills are not the best. But I will take plus athletes over guys that really don't do much of anything. And I feel like he's an improvement over Elijah Strong. I do. I think he's going to play Elijah Strong's role, except he's bigger, he can play defense, and he's an athlete. That's not a knock on Strong. I think Strong will probably find himself a good home. I just think given what Boston College needs, an athlete at that position who can really hold their own, and we've seen him hold his own against Power 4 teams. He played in the SEC. That's a plus. I think back to like TJ Bickerstaff. TJ Bickerstaff was a bit of a liability offensively too. But he found a role at BC, and he was valuable. You may not have liked some of the things he did. He was not a perfect player. But at that 4 position, he did a lot for you. He could rebound. He was big. He was physical. BC's lacked that. Strong last year, he got pushed around a bit. I don't see that happening with Aiden Shaw. I think this guy has, more to it. I think he can hold his own, and he's just dying for a chance. There's something there. I don't expect him to be an outside shooter. He's not going to be that. But he could be the next good big that you have. Remember, the one thing that, as much as you may not like Earl Grant and what he's done, and believe me, I've already said my piece on him, he's done a good job of developing bigs here at Boston College. And you can draw the through line there from James Karnick to TJ Bickerstaff to Quinton Post to Jaden Hastings to even Chad Venning, who was more established, but they've had a good run of big dudes here at BC. And Shaw's not the biggest guy, and he can actually play guard too if you really want a gigantic guard out there. But I see him more probably at a 3 or a 4. You get a guy now who won't get shoved around, who can hold his own and make some plays that'll get fans excited. Just take out his statistics. If you watch his highlight reel, it's impressive. Then you look at the stats and go, was that all he did all year? Was that those shots that we're watching right now? But I think there is something there. And now the big question is, I think a lot of folks have already said, I don't trust Earl Grant. Can he coach him up? Or, Quinton Post, when he was at Mississippi State, averaged like 3 points per game and came off the bench. So it's not like he hasn't done this before. And again, you've brought in guys that had haven't accomplished much, like Josh Beadle. Josh Beadle was a top 150 recruit too. He wasn't like some schlub that they brought off the street in Clemson. He just didn't line up. I just think that maybe I was a little too rough on Aiden Shaw. I go back and I listen to that and I'm going, whew, I'm rough. But I'm thinking I'll give this one a chance. He's an upgrade of what you had. That's what I'm thinking right now. I think Aiden Shaw is an upgrade. Is he what you need? Is he what you build this transfer portal class around? I hope not, because that's not what you need to do. But if he's a cog of these 5 or 6 guys that you're going to get in the portal, I'm fine with that. The other name that had been popping around was Kerry Booth, who was with Illinois and he was at Notre Dame. Similar statistics. I like what Aiden Shaw can do better, and Kerry Booth is now at Colorado State. So, I look at guys like that. I think this is a better fit. And, TJ Power is another one that we've talked about on the podcast. I think this is a better fit too. I think I think this probably will close the door on TJ Power. I don't know where he goes from here, but I think getting a guy like Aiden Shaw who's actually shown glimpses while Power really hasn't is a big difference, and honestly better use of your funds. Now, additionally, we've had on the last show, I talked about Donald Hand signing. He's back, and I said how big of a deal that is. Part 2 already came out, and that was Jaden Hastings, who did the exact same thing. He put up a video saying he's coming back, and then they have him signing his NIL paperwork. So he's back too. So 2 of your 3 bigs that you need are back. And then the last one is Fred Payne. Maybe, it's Wednesday. I'm recording this. Maybe Wednesday night we'll get that video for him. And then, your trio of what you need to build around will be back for Boston College. So those are my updates and why I thought I may have been a little too tough on him. Now, in a moment, I want to get into the needs for BC basketball. What do they still need to do? And I have some thoughts and maybe a name or two that I think BC needs to consider when it comes to the transfer portal. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I just realized how much I was using, how much money I was spending going out to dinner with my family. And so I wanted to save. And now I budget smarter and I save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch to check my finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Go check out Locked On ACC. They're talking about all the new hires in college basketball in the Atlantic Coast Conference. If you want a good preview, check out Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs and the crew over there at Locked On ACC. Now, everydayers out there, you know the portal is going to be absolutely essential for BC basketball to have any chance next year. You know, the roster itself, it looks like we know who's leaving and who's staying. You have returning Donald Hand and Jaden Hastings and Fred Payne. All were absolutely critical in terms of who BC needed to come back. Additionally, they have Nick Petronio and Luca Taves, two guards that were from last year's class. Petronio got the redshirt treatment. Taves played, had glimpses, but still needs a lot of work, I think, to get to where he needs to be. You have, on top of all that, Connie Chachanda, and then three freshmen. Jack Bailey, Akbar Wahid, and Caleb Steger, a guard. So then the question is, what does BC need in the transfer portal? And the answer is yes. Yes, they need that. So ask me a question. Do they need this? Yeah, they do. What about that? Yeah, they do. Do they need a center? Sure. Do they need a guard? Yep. Do they need a wing? Yep. So they need everything. Like there's no, like if I were to rank what Boston College needs most, I think a valuable point guard would probably be most. Like I think Luca Taves has it. I think he will become that, but you don't have the opportunity. You don't have the luxury of waiting to find out if he has it or if he's going to become the next Chaz Kelly and struggle here. You need someone who's a veteran, and then maybe Luca Taves can take that spot over, and maybe it's midseason or maybe it's next year. But you need somebody. So a valuable point guard is one of my big needs here for BC basketball. Additionally, I think Boston College needs another guard. You lost three of them. You're bringing in one already in Caleb Steger. But I think another guard, someone who can score. You got Fred Payne, you got Donald Hand. Those are two. But you don't know what you have with Steger yet. I think another guard. And my number two big need is a wing. That 3 spot still concerns me. Akbar Wahid, I'm going to guess, is probably going to get that spot right off the bat. But he's a true freshman. Will he be, he's a 4-star. He's great. But will he be good enough to get you to where you need to be, which is keeping Earl Grant's job? You may not want him back, but that's what the program's goal has to be for next year is do good enough so that Earl Grant keeps his job. So I look at Akbar Wahid, and maybe he is, maybe he's not. But a guard like a 6'5", 6'6" wing, 6'6" probably, somebody who can shoot. You need something there. And then my final need is a big. I think Jaden Hastings will be your guy. He will. But one big knock on Jaden Hastings is he's an absolute machine when it comes to causing fouls. He fouls all the time. And you have Jack Bailey behind him, who's a true freshman, who honestly, you're talking guys that may need to redshirt. He's a guy that may need to redshirt. So you need another big. The Venning Hastings deal last year was pretty good. Maybe you get Hastings and then another big that can just eat some minutes. You need somebody there as a center. That's your third big need. And I think that will be like a wing, a point guard, and a big. Those are your 3 really big needs. And I think BC will have to go out there and address that. I'm fascinated to see. The thing with the transfer portal, too, is across Boston College sports in general, the staff don't like to talk about it because then that makes them basically wager against themselves. Like they're doing contracts against themselves basically, because if you show interest, other schools will show interest. So it's airtight in terms of who is, getting info. The only time you get it is from agents. But agents will go out there and they'll talk about it because they want their clients to get the most publicity possible. But the school, zip. So we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be crazy. There's going to, there still could be another player that enters the portal from BC. I don't think it'll happen, but you never know. But who they bring in, that's going to be the key for next year. On tomorrow's show, we'll talk more football. get into some discussions about recruiting. I think you guys love the talks about recruiting. It's a big weekend coming up. I'll explain more about that and a lot more. For my everydayers, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Boston College your first listen every single day. And for all of you who are just checking us out, hit that like and subscribe button before you leave. We are a daily Boston College podcast hosted by an insider like myself. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.